It's July 2023, which means it is time for a new recipe for our Make Bread 365 challenge. And this month it is baguettes. Hey y'all, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia. On this channel, we talk all things real whole grains from a biblical perspective. Now you may be wondering, what in the world? Where am I? Well, I'm actually out of my shed because I was thinking about this video and it dawned on me that I have not, I never recorded an intro and an outro. So I did not make the recipe in my shed. So rest assured, I'm just filming an intro and outro for you guys just really quick because I've got to get it done and this is real life and just how it is. It is also July in Florida, and as you can see, it is about 1,123.2% humidity, to be exact. You can check my math. So for those of you who do not know, I'm participating in the Make Bread 365 challenge, which is a challenge started by Little Farm Folk, Mackenzie over there on Instagram. It's more of an Instagram challenge where we're challenging ourselves to not have to buy bread from the store for all of 2023. And so every single month there's a new recipe that me and many other creators, we share with you guys. And each month is a specific bread. So July is baguettes, and good news, you kind of get two recipes in one here because the recipe I use for baguettes is the exact same recipe I use for French bread. Just, change up the shape. Voila. You have French bread and then you have baguettes. So whichever one you want, this recipe will work. I also only use 100% freshly milled wheat. So there are other creators that use store-bought flour. They may be sourdough, whatever the case may be. But here on this channel, all of our recipes are only using 100% freshly milled wheat. So no store-bought flour or anything like that here. So if all this sounds great to you, be sure to follow me over on Instagram at Grains and Grit. Hashtag MakeBread365 is the hashtag. So be sure to post all your creations, and also be sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Click the like to this video so more people on YouTube see it, and hit the bell icon as well to be notified of future videos. Now, before we get into this recipe, a couple things. First of all, I highly recommend you using hard white wheat. And a little secret, one thing I've discovered is not all hard white wheat act the same with this recipe. Don't ask me why, but Pleasant Hill grain, for some reason, is the best hard white wheat to use for this. Now, of course, I have not used every single person's hard white wheat, but I have used Pleasant Hill grains for a while, and then I switched. Then I had wheat berries from another company. I can't even remember what they were. I just know that they were not Pleasant Hill grain, and the recipe actually did not turn out as well. It still was fine, but not quite like it. So something's going on with the hard white wheat berries with Pleasant Hill grain. That is just working. So no, but anyway, just use hard white wheat berries. You also could possibly use Camus, but I haven't tried it yet. So do not, so I'm not sure about that. Another thing is I have noticed a huge difference in using the yeast. I do prefer the instant yeast with this recipe than the active dry yeast. If you have active dry yeast, again, you can use it, but I find that it takes much longer to rise and get where I'm wanting it to go. All right, so let's get out of the shed for a bit so we can make this recipe. First off, we're just going to make a sponge. So this is hard white wheat from Pleasant Hill grain. For some reason, this is the best wheat to use. But we are just adding about 2.5 cups of flour, freshly milled in here, as well as 1.5 tablespoons of sugar, and then just 2 cups of warm water. We're going to mix this all together. And once that's all mixed up, we're just going to add in our 1 tablespoon of instant yeast and mix this up to proof for about 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how cold or hot it is in your house, until it's nice and bubbly. I do prefer to use instant yeast. I have used active yeast before, but it just takes much longer to rise. I just find that it works better with instant yeast. So let this sit for 15 minutes, and then after that, you'll see that it's nice and bubbly. We're then going to add our 1 tablespoon of oil, 2.5 teaspoons of salt. I do also prefer to use olive oil in here. And then I'm going to add just 2 cups of flour, and then we're going to go from there. So I start to mix it together because you don't want to just dump in flour for freshly milled wheat because it's going to change every day when you make this. So when I start to see it pull off the sides of the bowl like this, this is whenever I generally want to start my kneading time. Now I will say, for some reason with this recipe, it can be a little bit. I do like to knead for 9 minutes, but as you will see later on, I did have to come in partially towards the end of the kneading because I found that it was too sticky and I needed to add a little bit more flour. So you do want to monitor this. And whenever I did add in more flour, I started with like a tablespoon, if even that. So you can see that here. I had about 2 minutes left and it just needed just a little bit. It was just too sticky. So again, this is just something you're going to have to watch. And what I do have a printable recipe for y'all below, but this can vary based on the type of wheat that you're using, how much humidity is in the air. For those who've watched my simple yeast bread loaf video, I mean, this is just part of bread baking with freshly milled wheat. But I generally know you're just going to get a better feel for this whenever you do it more. I'm just going for a soft dough. And again, we're just still kneading it. It's still sticking a little bit to the bowl, but I much prefer to go on the side of tacky or slightly too sticky during the kneading process like this, because I just don't want it to be too dense. You add too much flour, it's going to be too dense of a bread. So it's been after 9 minutes. I stop it, and as you can see, it is what I would call tacky. The dough is sticking to my hands just a little bit, as you can see here, but I'm able to pull it apart and it's not breaking off. So it's a little tacky. Remember, we can always add a little flour. We can't take it away. And so this is how I like it. So don't freak out if it's like this. I also never do the window pane thing. I just don't do it. So we're going to get this off my hands, and now we're just going to let it rise. I am totally fine rising it in the bowl here. This is the Nutrimel Artiste that I'm using, not my Bosch. So this is Miss Annie Artiste that I'm using, and we're just going to let this dough rise for about 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes, maybe an hour. It all depends. But in the meantime, bonus, I'm going to show you how I make my spaghetti. So while this is rising, I go ahead and start my spaghetti. So this is just some ground beef, grass-fed ground beef. I add some onion powder, some garlic powder. I do not measure, I just eyeball it. And then I do add some salt to the meat, and then I just brown that up. This is a super simple spaghetti, nothing fancy, but my kids love it. And I can make it while I'm making the bread. This is also one of those meat thingies from the Pampered Chef that I love. It breaks it up so well. And then disclosure, I don't have pasta down. So yes, that is store-bought pasta that you see. I know. And then for my tomato sauce, all that I do is it's crushed tomatoes with salt and Italian seasoning. And then I add the ground beef in. Super cheap, super simple. And my kids and my family love this. Okay, so here we are. We're just checking on the dough. It has pretty much doubled. It's kind of hard to tell in this type of bowl. But here I want to talk about the pans. This right here is a baguette pan I got from Pleasant Hill Grain. I will link it below. I also have the French bread pan for this as well. And this recipe, again, can be used for French bread or baguettes. It's just all goes into shaping it. If you don't have one of these pans, you can just get a clean tea towel like this and kind of bunch it up, kind of fold it like this, and you place a loaf there, you place a loaf in the middle. That way they can rise and not touch each other. You do want to make sure that that's floured down to keep everything from sticking. But I do like the pans because it helps get that crispier crust. Now, here is the dough. It is still a little tacky, which again is what I like. But again, do not automatically go to adding more flour. Now here I'm saying if you're doing French bread, just cut it in half. I'm doing these 3 baguettes, so I'm just cutting it into 3 dough balls. But again, I just want to emphasize these scrapers are great because this allows you to scrape off the dough without adding more flour. And then if necessary, you can either just lightly flour your hands or use a little bit of water. Now I do like to lightly flour the surface when it comes to shaping, because as I roll it down, it's going to stick and then the whole shaping does no good. But the shaping is important to this. So I roll it out, very similar to my yeast bread loaves, my regular bread loaves, but here we're going to kind of fold this, take a third of it, fold it where it's in the middle, and then we're going to kind of push it down a little bit, and then we fold it over again, kind of close up that crease, and then we just roll it out to the size that I need. Obviously, if you're doing French bread, it's going to be a little bit shorter, but these are long baguettes, and basically once you get a little dough worm over here, then I just place it into my baguette pan and kind of shape it to where it's fairly even, so I don't have a completely wonky loaf. And then we're just going to shape the other ones. So again, when shaping, you're just going to take about a third of the dough, gently pull it out, push it down, fold it over to kind of the middle of the dough, and then kind of seal up the seams there, and then roll it over again, seal up the seams, and then gently be rolling it out. And the ends, I like to taper them off into little tapers, not just a blunt edge. But this part may take a little practice. I have found if I do not do it this way, the inside will not turn out right. The crumb on the inside will not be right. I actually got this method from, I think, one of Peter Reinhardt's cookbooks, where he actually talks about shaping baguettes and bread loaves and all the things. So thank you, Peter Reinhardt, for your wonderful knowledge. And here we are. We're going to cover it with a tea towel. This is one from Michael Gropp, and I love it. And then while they are rising, we need to preheat the oven to 425 degrees. And while everything is rising and we're preheating, we're going to make the garlic butter. So this is just softened 1 stick of butter and almost an entire garlic clove. I add a little bit of Italian seasoning in, and then put it in a pretty bowl. And then I like to top it with just some parsley to make it look a little pretty. But this is absolutely delicious. And here it is. It's about 25-30 minutes later, and it's time to now score the bread. I'm still not great at scoring, but here you go. And then you can either spritz it with water, or I can gently brush it with water, or you can do an egg wash here. Just if you do an egg wash, it will be more brown on top. And then we're just going to place it into our 425 degree oven for 10 minutes. And then after 10 minutes, we're going to turn it down to 375 degrees. Don't open up the oven for another about 15 minutes. And then here I have my beautiful cutting board, and here they are. They look absolutely beautiful. And I like just go ahead and putting it on a cutting board. I'll link this one below. It actually comes with a bread knife, and the crumbs fall down in between those grooves. So this is the perfect one to serve at the table or to allow people to do it themselves, because then you don't have crumbs everywhere. They fall right in. And then I actually like to let this rest for about 10 minutes before cutting it. And here they are. The best way to have these is hot. You can either break it off or slice it, but these turn out well. I know they're not like super perfect shape. I'm still working on it, but the bottom line is that it's soft on the inside. You can see I could have gone a little bit crunchier on the crust, but I'm not too concerned about it for me, because I think my family kind of likes it a bit less crunchy with the baguettes. So that's the bread knife that comes with it here. And again, you can either just have them where they're breaking it off, but for supper, I'm just going to slice them here for everyone. I did have to grab a little tea towel because wowzers, this bread is super hot. So just be careful when slicing it. And then there's our garlic butter. And here is the inside of it. So you can see it's beautiful. It's soft. It's fluffy on the inside with that slight bit of crunch on the outside. And of course, this is how I'm buttering it now. You can open it up, butter it however which way you want. Don't stress. It's delicious. And then here we are with the fake pasta spaghetti and just add some Parmesan cheese on top. My spaghetti sauce usually is not this runny, but I had to add some diced tomatoes and I didn't drain it. So that's my fault. But here it is. This is supper tonight, y'all. And I did all this kind of at the same time. So it took me about a couple hours, but it was delicious with fresh bread for supper. There you have it, y'all. Bada bing, bada boom. This was actually so delicious. I'll be honest, I'm still working on my crust to get it that perfect crunch, but honestly, I am way more concerned about the inside than I am on the outside. And the inside, it's just light and fluffy. I mean, people may be surprised that this is actually a whole grain bread, but that's the beauty with fresh and milled wheat, is that you can still do these recipes with actual whole grain wheat, and it's so different than your whole wheat flour from the grocery store. Printable recipe will be in the description box below. Also, you can check out previous recipes. Just go to grainsandgrit.com/makebread365 on my website. And that's where I have a ticker of all recipes that we've done so far. So you can have those, to catch up if you haven't been following along so far. As always, I hope y'all have a wonderful day and happy eating. Sure to serve this with your next Italian meal. It is perfect. And y'all have a wonderful day, and I'm going to get back into the AC because my face it's melting off. Yeah. See ya.